So you've got $100 to burn on a pair of true wireless earbuds? Then let's take a look at the best from the likes of Samsung, Nothing, OnePlus, Jabra, SoundCore, EarFun, and more.
We'll thoroughly test the noise cancelling, sound quality, phone calls, battery life, and all the good, bad, and the ugly. That's a lot of work. Why aren't we getting paid for this stuff?
That's because, namaste, we're DHRME. Dudes honestly refusing money every time.
First up, the Samsung Buds FE in this funky Stormtrooper colorway for about $100. Kevin, take it away.
That's just one of the colors it's available in. Black buds and a Stormtrooper charging case, or all white. The fit is amazing. There's deep insertion, plus those wingtips are really solid. You get a normal pair of silicone bands in the box in case you don't like the wing-styled ones. The way you control these buds are with touch controls, and they're reliable in our testing. Let's talk battery life, because they're advertised at 6 hours with ANC on. We tested that number and we got 6.5 hours. Not bad, Samsung. And these buds are very usable in the wind if you find yourself outdoors a lot using these earbuds. And if you're talking on the phone or just talking with the buds in to other people, it's good to know that there's no occlusion, so you don't have that feeling of hearing your voice through your own skull. And as is normal with these Samsung Buds, the overall case footprint is small. They are tiny and quite pocketable. And there's also a wear sensor, so if you have to take out a bud, it will pause your audio automatically and resume when you put them back in. In terms of sound, these are beautiful. They're clear sounding with crystal clear mids and highs. And in terms of noise cancelling and transparency, well, let's start with the latter first. The transparency we rank at tier A. But overall, the volume and clarity of noise let in is quite good.
So we're still on the pros, and let's talk about active noise cancelling, and let's talk about specifically my ears and my experience. Now, I thought these were really good. I put them in tier A in our noise cancelling, tiers that we have. But we will talk a little bit about this also in the cons, so hold on to that thought just for a second. But on another pro, this is from Samsung, a popular brand. And if you do have unit variants where sometimes things don't work as intended, you can count on pretty good after sales service, and those things are also important when you're buying products like these. Now, in terms of sound, I put them very, very highly, and I'm a Samsung phone user, so I get the SSC codec, the Samsung scalable codec, and that really gives a wonderful representation of music, thundering bass, very chill, relaxed treble, while still not being veiled. And Samsung has hit a good balance for me personally on the treble. I just wish that the bass was turned down a little bit. Luckily, most of the bass action is in the sub bass, so it doesn't interfere too much with the mids. Timbre is pretty good, but not perfect, and quantity of bass is very good. So overall, as expected from Samsung, great sounding buds. But how do you sound when you use these for phone calls?
The Samsung Galaxy Buds FE in noisy conditions with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Samsung Galaxy Buds FE in breezy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Well, after listening to those tests, we'd say in noisy conditions, you definitely hear the cars, but you also hear the voice pretty clearly. And in windy conditions, you hear the wind, but the voice is still audible, albeit somewhat muffled. And for the fuckman out there, you get a couple of controls while you're on calls. You can answer and hang up, which is pretty basic. There's unfortunately no way to mute straight from the buds. You'll have to grab your device to do that. And there are some gestures. The touch and hold can be customized to either change the ANC mode or adjust the volume straight from the buds. But there's a catch. You can't have both at the same time. Big sacrifice in our opinion. Oh, and this doesn't just apply to phone calls, but in general too. Either volume or ANC, not both.
Now, coming to the sound, which we talked about and we praised, these actually employ the SSC codec or the AAC, and the former you only get with Samsung phones. So if you are somebody who is not in the Samsung ecosystem, you're not going to get the best sound quality that these can produce. And also, if you for some reason don't like these earbuds, you don't get a custom EQ, only presets, which are very good, but still they're only presets. And the stock sound, as I said, is a bit bass heavy. The clear preset, for example, is amazing, but again, if you don't like something there, you can't really tweak it. And of course, we talked about the Samsung lock-in. There's also an Android lock-in, because you can only get the app for the Buds, the wearable app, if you're on Android and not on Apple. Apple getting a taste of their own medicine there. You also get only 3 tips in the box, which was plenty for us. But again, your ear holes may vary. And IPX2 is all you're getting in terms of waterproofing, which means you should be a bit more careful with these earbuds if it's a bit wet outside, and you get nothing on the case in terms of IP rating and 0 dust protection as well.
So another con is that there's no multi-point in the normal sense. But if you have 2 Samsung devices, you can use these buds with both at a time. Ecosystems, am I right? There is Pull Connect though, so if you're connected previously to a device, you can just select it from the Bluetooth menu and it'll automatically connect. Also, there's no wireless charging on these buds. And just to wrap up the ANC and transparency, there is also 0 customizability in the app for ANC as well as transparency. So no sliders and no modes. And something that I've experienced, Rohan hasn't, is an odd imbalance between the left and the right earbud. And this is something I noticed in noise cancelling and in transparency mode. So the left earbud would cancel or suppress more noise than the right earbud. So it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Even though the level of ANC and transparency was relatively high, it felt odd to have this kind of imbalance in both of your ears.
Yeah, but I just to note, I didn't experience this, so that's interesting, isn't it?
And if any of you have these buds, did you face it, or is it just my problem? Well, this next one has no problems with balance. The Nothing Ear A at $99. It comes with that unique design and they're very comfortable in the ear. And yeah, yellow. Need we say more? But if you're not into it, we don't blame you. You can also get it in black and white. But the ANC is really one of the best on this list, Tier A. This is a serious improvement from the Nothing Ear 2. A good amount of noise reduction across frequencies. But the low end is not as suppressed as on the AirPods Pro Gen 2. That's why it's not in Tier S. In terms of IP rating, the buds get IP54 dust and water resistance. Very strong. And not only that, the case also gets a little bit. It's IPX2. And it's the only one on this list that has an IP rating at all for the case. Then in terms of codecs, it has the best resolution codec for most Android phones, LDAC. And there's also that fancy shortcut to ChatGPT, but that is only supported if you have a Nothing phone. Just be careful that you don't confuse this with your voice assistant, because it's not as integrated and it's just a way to call up ChatGPT through your earbuds. That's it. So you know what? Scratch that. Not exactly a reason to buy these.
What is the reason to buy these is that wear sensor, and it works really well. We never saw wear sensors at this price point before, but on this list, you're seeing them more and more often, so that's interesting. You also get a low lag mode for you gamers out there. So now let's talk about the sound, because these are fantastic sounding wireless earbuds. You get LDAC, which is again one of the best codecs on Android and more universally available. The volume was also pretty decent at about 40% on my Z Fold 5. I thought it was fairly good. A very nice stock tuning, and that's something we've come to expect now from Nothing. Compared to the more expensive Nothing Ear, these have a more pronounced mid-bass bump. The treble is also a bit smoothed out, so cymbals and hi-hats lack a bit of bite or clarity. Overall, these are very capable earbuds for sound, but the stock tuning and that slight smoothing effect in the treble lets them down a little bit, but we still rate these very highly. Now, we use these a lot in the wind, and the wind performance is average, I'd say, but there's no dedicated wind reduction mode. We noticed that the higher the noise cancelling, the worse the wind disturbance was, so maybe there's a relationship there. It does have multi-point with device list in the app, as well as the ability to pull connection from a device you've used previously. A fuckman's dream. Speaking of which, have a listen to our popsicles, icicles, and test.
All right, we have the Nothing Buds A with some cars passing by in the distance. Let's see how they do with noisy conditions. Here comes our first car. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Now we have the Nothing Ear A in breezy and windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One, two, three.
In noisy conditions, you heard the birds, but the cars were somewhat suppressed. Overall, the voice wasn't distorted, and in the next test, you could hear the wind a bit, but the voice was pretty clear and audible. Fakman controls include answer hang up and volume straight from the buds. You can also change the ANC mode while on a call, but unfortunately, there's no mute straight from the buds. The advertised and the actual tested battery life were both at 5 hours and 30 minutes. Pretty good, but easily one of the lowest on this list. Now, there's no wireless charging on these buds, so you're gonna have to grab your good old USB Type-C. And those double pinch squeeze controls are very unintuitive and error prone. That's something you'll need to learn because a double pinch and hold is the way you adjust volume. Weird.
Overall, for the sound, these are a bit more bass boosted than I'd like, so that's probably a con. And the treble has this bit of a smoothing effect. Other than that, you also don't get any normal EQ. You get stupid people EQ with the circle and things happening, and they don't even really respond as they're advertised to respond. So that was a bit of a negative for sound.
Well, you don't have to feel stupid about this next option, the OnePlus Buds 3 at $99.
Yeah, I really like these buds. They have a very nice physical design. You know, you get two colors, the splendid blue and the one we have here in metallic gray. It's very comfortable with oval shaped tips. And you also get IP55, which is a very good IP rating for the buds. Unfortunately, there's none on the case. Now, you do get touch controls and slide for volume. And I think on this list, these have the best control scheme. You get everything you need and it's very accessible. So in terms of battery life, you know, these are advertised at 6.5 hours, but surprise, surprise, we got 7 hours with the ANC on. Pretty good, OnePlus. I guess that's a half plus.
Okay, so multi-point is there on these buds as well, and there's also a device list in the app as well as pull connection. And there's Google Fast Pair. The full shebang? Yeah, there's also a low lag mode for you gamers out there, and there's very little occlusion to these buds. The ANC has multiple modes in the app that you can choose from. There's Smart, Max, Moderate, and Mild. We tested it on Max and we put it in Tier B. It does a decent job at suppressing the low end, but voices are still quite clearly audible. These buds do a decent job in the wind as well. But the moment you go higher up in the amount of ANC, the wind noise is also more audible. But it's not exactly Stolen's. And then the transparency comes in at Tier A, very similar to the EarFun Air Pro 3, which we'll get to in a bit. The OnePlus Buds 3 lets in ambient noise quite a bit and is very comfortable to use for conversations too. Ambient noise is ever so slightly suppressed and hence doesn't make it to our Tier S. Also good to note there is no customizability in the app for transparency.
Talking about customizability, for sound you do get a 6-band custom EQ. There's a few presets and a bass wave slider. Great for bass lovers, and it is really loud. So now it sounds great on AAC and LHDC. You get a custom hearing test as well called Golden Sound, the same stuff that Oppo and others use. So it uses a mix of ear canal and user entered hearing tests. The latter is always going to be error prone, and as someone with some hearing damage that has been tested by an audiologist, I can confirm that the test was kind of off. But let's switch to sound because these sound very, very good on LHDC, which is the best codec these support. They were very loud as we said, and I was listening comfortably at about 20 to 30% volume on my Galaxy Fold 5. And overall, it's a nice sound, and LHDC is definitely an improvement for fine details, you know. These buttons need LHDC to shine. Their good tuning does very well on AAC too, don't get me wrong, but on AAC the treble sometimes misses some resolution and you unfortunately don't get the best out of these buds. I like the tuning, but I do think these buds could do with some restoring of the mids. I tried using the EQ in the app and boosted the 1K region a bit in the EQ and turned down bass wave to -2, and that really helped its case. But how do they sound to people who want to hear your sound?
Now we have the OnePlus Buds 3 in noisy conditions with cars and a big bus passing by. Let's see how it does with that bus. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right, I've dropped the wind meter. I need to probably order a new one or fix it, but for now, we're going ahead with the test. The OnePlus Buds 3 in breezy and windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Well, in noisy conditions, the OnePlus Buds 3 are quite admirable. You heard the birds, but the cars were just a light whoosh. The voice was loud and clear, and it continued to do a great job in the wind. But for the Fuckman, you get answer hang up and volume. There's no mute, but you can luckily change the ANC mode while on a call, so that's good. And something that is a me problem again is that the fit wasn't very secure. They were very comfortable.
No, man, Kevin, no. It's not just a you problem. It's an us problem. I think also for me, it didn't fit as securely as I thought it did in the beginning. So it's a we problem.
Yeah, I mean, they just fell out with a bit of exercise or extra movement, and I had to keep adjusting them. But that's maybe sometimes the trade-off you have between great comfort and fit. But of course, you need to check if you have the right tip. And how many tips do you get in the box? Just 3. We thought 4 was the standard, but just 3. Also, you cannot turn off the wear sensor, but luckily it does work well compared to other buds. But let's talk about codecs, because the LHDC codec is the best codec these buds support. But they're not found on many Android phones though. And there's no wireless charging. Now that we're done with these, let's look at some older buds. 4 to be precise, starting with
the EarFun Air Pro 3 at $80. Now these are excellent for ANC, about tier A for ANC and transparency, and they're priced pretty low at about $80, one of the lowest on this list. Check out the links in the description for the latest prices. The touch controls are responsive, accurate, and customizable. You get wireless charging, 4 sizes of silicone tips with good comfort, and aptX adaptive for excellent sound, and dare we say one of the best sounding buds on this list. Did we shock you? But what about phone calls?
So the EarFun Air Pro 3 in noisy conditions with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. So now we have the EarFun Air Pro 3 in breezy and windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
In noisy conditions, the voice sounded somewhat muffled, and in the wind it did similarly. Overall, we'd say these are not a bad pick for calls. And for the Fuckman, you get your answer hang up and volume controls. There's no mute, and you cannot change the ANC mode from the buds, but you can change them from the app, which is unique in itself because there are many buds that won't let you use the app when you're on a call.
Let's talk about some cons, because EarFun, even though these buds sound good, they screwed up big time by releasing these with a completely wrong sound tuning like you see on screen before you. These are great for sound, as we said, except for one little thing, and that's the control on the bass. Oh, 2 little things, since these shine most on aptX adaptive, which not all phones support. Now, the physical design is probably one place these guys have cut costs, because it's a bulky case, it's a bit thick, and comfort, how are they, Kevin, for comfort?
Comfortable, but not a secure fit. And they're IPX5 only, so good enough for workouts, but there's no dust resistance for the beach, for example. And again, no IP rating for the case. And the whole stem style design is fairly generic. Also, the battery life was pretty underwhelming and deceptive. EarFun advertised 7 hours. We tested it and got just under 5 hours. The support and after-sales service will really depend on the region you're in, since it's not a popular brand. But the next one's a popular brand in this space.
The Jabra Elite 4. Jabra probably has the most logical naming convention on their products that we've ever heard, and the Elite 4 is the one that is in this price range. So why do we like them? It's a sleek and portable and pocketable case, small and secure buds, IP55 on the buds, physical buttons, a secure fit, and pretty decent sound on aptX. My volume was at about 50% on the Galaxy Z Fold 5. I love the mids, and these aren't bass monsters, but they're not going for that either. And you get aptX for codecs.
There's multi-point Google Fast Pair, but there's no pull connect. Most of the controls are customizable. You can choose from playback, volume, or ANC. The Jabra service, we hear excellent things about it in the comments. And it's Fuckman approved with mute controls too. Oh, and speaking of calls, here, listen to some samples.
All right, we're also picking up a bit of wind now. This is the Jabra Elite 4 in noisy conditions with cars passing by. Hop, hop, popsicle. ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Icicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 3. Right, Jabra Elite in breezy and windy conditions. Pretty breezy right now. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
The microphones in noisy conditions were struggling somewhat with the cars, making quite some noise and sometimes overpowering the volume of the voice. And they're quite decent in the wind as well. A decent pick for calls overall. You get good Fuckman controls, answer and hang up, volume and mute, the full shebang. A Fuckman pick if there ever was one. You can also change ANC on a call, which is very handy, and enable side tone to hear yourself clearly. Sound wise, the only area where the Jabra Elite 4 lacks for me is the bass. These produce enough quantity of bass, it's just that smaller drivers can't produce very good quality of bass. The stock tuning is similar to the OnePlus Buds 3, recessed mids, and that limited 5-band EQ can get some of those mids back, but not everything.
And there are a bunch of extras that you do not get. There's no wireless charging, no in-ear sensor to automatically play, pause your music. There's also a lot of occlusion when you're on a call, and the side tone feature in the amp didn't really help. And if you're listening to music with ANC on, you do still hear the wind. And speaking of ANC, we put these buds for ANC and transparency in tier B. However, there was a fair bit of white noise in transparency mode. And we tested the battery life on ANC and with the aptX codec, and we got just a bit above the 5-hour mark. So who's the Jabra Elite for? Well, for the physical among you, those of you who like physical buttons and like to get physically active with fairly neutral sound on the go.
Let's go back to the Moondrop Golden Ages 1979. Now, these buds are all about sound, right? So we're going to start with that. Crazy high volume to begin with. You get LDAC, but I was listening to it at about 10 or 15% on my phone, and that was kind of loud. The bass is very chill and you're getting a very clear experience. In fact, for my kind of music, I would say that the bass is wanting and even anemic. The bass head profile helps, fix a bit of that, but still not enough for me. Speaking of bass head, there are 3 EQ presets and they're slightly different, as you can see on these charts here. What I will say is that across frequencies, these sound very, very good. And for music with lead instruments like a solo or something, these are amazing. Now, we're done with the sound. Let's talk about the rest of it. Advertised battery life is 6 hours on AAC, and we got 7 hours and 26 minutes on AAC. These are only $80. That's another pro. What about the microphone samples?
So now we have the Moondrop Golden Ages with slightly noisy conditions. Stars are going a bit slower. Let's see how they do. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, icicle, test, test, 3. All right, now we have the Moondrop Golden Ages in slightly breezy and windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Well, in noisy as well as windy conditions, the Moondrop was just okay when the background noise or wind noise was low. But once it picked up, then Rohan's voice started cutting out. Not very predictable and hard to recommend for calls. And to be honest, guys, our experience wasn't great even in quiet conditions. And if you would even want to bother with the Fuckman controls after hearing what you just heard about the quality of the mics, well, you get no fancy Fuckman controls here either. Only answer and hang up. And now moving to the cons. Even though the advertised numbers was 6 hours on AAC and we got more than that, 7 hours, 26 minutes. On LDAC though, we got a measly 2 hours and 42 minutes. So how's the after sales service? I don't know, because there's a question mark in the script. What am I supposed to say here?
We'll keep that.
But in all seriousness, it is a smaller brand, so after-sales service will depend on the region you're in. The charging case is very chunky, as well as the box it came in. Very chunky. That's kind of the theme. Everything is quite chunky. And even though it's chunky, there's no wireless charging. How could they not fit that into these buds and in the case? There's also no extras like multi-point or a wear sensor. And the transparency and ANC are nothing to write home about. Both tier C.
Oh, you thought we were done, were you? No, no, we are still going to drop some moons. The left and right channels don't become mono with just one bud in. So if you have one bud listening and one in the case, you're only going to hear the right or the left channel. The app situation is awful. You have to sideload it on Android, needs tons of permissions, including precise location and access to all our files for some reason. And surprisingly, it says it's available for iOS in the marketing material, but it was nowhere to be found for us. And the older Moondrop Link app isn't compatible with these buds, so you have to get a new APK. Alright, from the age of gold to the age of liberty.
The SoundCore Liberty 4 NC, to be precise. The design is interesting. It's got a button on the case, and that button has multiple functions. It's meant to open the case, as well as put the buds into pairing mode, and the LED is used for the battery level. And these buds on this list have the most number of colors you can choose from. 5. We have this white and blue. The buds are stem style, and in terms of sound, they support the LDAC codec. The app also has quite a bit of features. They have an EQ, you can customize the controls, and there's also ANC customization. The battery life is advertised at 8 hours with ANC on, and we got close to 10 hours. The strongest in terms of battery life on this list. Then the ANC comes in at tier A, in the same league as the Nothing Ear A and the Samsung Galaxy Buds FE on this list. So in terms of extras, you get an in-ear sensor, so it can automatically pause and play your music, as well as wireless charging. There's also multi-point with a device list in the app, but unfortunately no pull connection. And these buds, they sound decent with ANC enabled. Tons of customization in the app as well, including presets and custom EQ and a hearing test. But a Fakman needs more than just multi-point. They need popsicles, icicles, and test
SoundCore Liberty 4 NC after update with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
Alright, getting a little bit of wind here on the SoundCore Liberty 4 NC in pretty breezy conditions. Let's see how they sound. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
When we covered these buds for the first time, the noise reduction on calls and in the wind was way too aggressive, but an update seems to have improved that.
Ice, ice, icicle, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
What did you guys think? Now, the Fakman controls just include answer and hang up, and there is volume, but that's only for audio, but does not work for phone calls. Also, there's no mute nor the ability to change ANC mode straight from the buds. Overall, we would say these are good sounding buds, like we said, pretty loud as well. But my problem was on my Galaxy Z Fold 5, I have a huge volume jump, so I just couldn't get it to a good listening volume. It was either too low or too high. There is a huge difference in sound between ANC on and off. With the ANC off, it just sounds much worse. It's definitely nicer with the ANC on. Interestingly, they are one of the more mid-forward buds on this list, and that's not something you see very often. I could hear lead instruments really well as vocals. Now, the bass did seem to have some sort of bug where it made a lot of shaking sound almost, but only with frequency sweeps and not so much with music. Overall, pretty good sounding buds. I think the SoundCore in-ears are much better than the SoundCore over-ears in this regard. On the downsides, the touch controls can also be hit or miss. It's very picky and you need to hit a specific spot and it takes some getting used to. The transparency also comes in at tier C, definitely below average, so it's fine for general awareness, but the overall volume of your environment is quite suppressed. It has only IPX4 rating on the buds and nothing on the case.
So who's the SoundCore Liberty 4 NC for? Well, someone who's looking for an all-rounder, and if sound isn't core to your purchase decision. Then what would I pick from this list of $99 earbuds or below? Well,
tell me, Gavin, tell me. I'm interested. What would you pick?
I'd pick the Nothing Ear A because of the unique design, the amazing comfort, tier A noise cancelling and transparency, and bells and whistles like the multi-point and wear sensor. But a close second would be an all-time favorite, the EarFun Air Pro 3.
You want to see my pick? Well, it's this one, the Samsung Buds FE. Now, this is very specific and it's for me, right? It's my pick. I use Samsung phones and this works perfectly for me. But I would not recommend these to everyone just because of that ecosystem lock-in. And in second place, I would give it to the EarFun or the nothing. Both check a lot of boxes. One is a bit ugly, one is beautiful. But what is even more beautiful are you, our beautiful YouTube members and patrons who support us. Thank you so much for your support, and a big shout out to our Fuck Mon tier supporters, Radioactive Iguana Dude, Paula, and Gamma Panda. You guys are awesome. You've got 99 problems, but earbuds ain't one, and we are DHRME. Dewey. A fuck man's dream. Speaking of which, have a listen to our popsicles, icicles, and testatrix. Yeah, she may also be a fuck man's dream.
I don't know what happened here.